My name is Tom Chapman. I'm the Executive Director of the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society. Thank you all for coming out here to the Martin Luther King Jr. Performing Arts Center for this evocative program that we have, Painting History, Francis Brand and the Firsts. It's going to be a panel discussion about the legacy of Francis Brand and about history, art, and breaking barriers. But before that, I wanted to have a few announcements before we get started. If you have cell phones, if you could silence them, we want to make sure we're giving our full attention to the program panelists. Would be appreciated, thank you. And if you've not already, talk to Kay Slaughter or Steve Rundell out there at the check-in table about becoming a member and supporting the Historical Society. I hope you take some time, either after the program to talk with Kay, take a newsletter, take a brochure, learn a little bit more about what we're doing in the community. I think you'll appreciate, since you're out for a program like this, you'll appreciate all the things that we're doing. And we also, to try to entice you to become a member, have our magazine of Albemarle Charlottesville history that has an article in it about Francis Brand that was written by one of our great interns. She was actually 2 years in a row one of our best interns, and she did a great article on Francis and the Firsts, selection of the Firsts. There are also refreshments in the lobby if you haven't picked up on those yet. We don't want to take them home, so please, after the program, grab what you can. I want to thank our board president, Phyllis Leffler, for providing the refreshments. Thank you, Phyllis. A few dates, one date to hold on your calendar, and then I'm going to get out of the way. January 23rd at 5:30 p.m. at the Center at Belvedere, we'll have our annual membership meeting. It's going to start with a reception at 5:30, hosted by the board of directors. Light refreshments, appetizers provided by Tropical Smoothie Cafe of Charlottesville, and then we're providing beverage vouchers to the Greenberries at the center. So the board will buy your first round of beer or wine if you'd like. The second round's on you. So that's with our keynote speaker, who will be Professor Risa Goluboff. She's the Dean of the UVA Law School. The title of her presentation is Charlottesville as Legal History. She's the 12th and first female dean of the University of Virginia School of Law, a renowned legal historian. She will be talking a preliminary legal history of the white supremacist and anti-Semitic violence that took place in Charlottesville, which is her hometown. And she's going to do a meditation on that process. So I think it's going to be a great program. Hope you can come out. That's Tuesday, January 23rd at the Center at Belvedere. 5:30 for the reception, 6:30 for the program. You can look on our website, albemarlehistory.org, to RSVP. And you do not have to be a member to attend. It's open. All of our programs, as much as possible, are free and open to the public. But I hope you'll consider joining us to support our work so we can bring such things like Francis Brand and all of the local history work that we do to the general public. There's a lot more that we're going to be doing. February 13th, mark your calendars, we're going to have Richard Guy Wilson. He's going to be talking, oh, I thought, wasn't me. Richard Guy Wilson, what is Charlottesville's architecture? He's going to be looking at colonial revival architecture in Charlottesville and Virginia. February 13th, 6 p.m. at the center. I know Richard, I saw him here earlier, so he'd love it to have you come out and listen to him talk about all the things that he knows very well. Be talking about Milton Grigg, Fisk Campbell, Walter Dabney Blair, who is actually the architect of the public library, which is where the Historical Society is located downtown. So please come out for that. Also, as part of the exhibit that we have out in the lobby, you can take a look at the portrait of Alice Ivory that was done by Brand on display. She's the first African-American woman sculptor in Charlottesville. And we are planning an exhibit of Miss Ivory's life and work next fall in partnership with the Jefferson School of African American Heritage Center. So look forward to that in the fall of 2024. So without further ado, enough with the announcements. I would like to invite Phyllis Leffler, our Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society Board President, who will then introduce our panel and moderator. Thank you very much for coming.
Good evening. It's wonderful to see so many people here, and I'm really excited about tonight's program and our ability to share it with you. It takes many hands to put together a program like this, the curating of the exhibit that's outside, the organizing of the panel, etc. So I just want to start out by thanking Tom Chapman. Did he disappear? He did. Our executive director, and Sterling Howell, our programs manager, and Kay Slaughter, who has really been indispensable in pulling all of this together and getting the speakers. I also want to acknowledge Cece Clover, who restored the Frank Walker's portrait of Francis Brand pro bono. We have all of these wonderful, wonderful portraits, but many of them are really in need of restoration. And to be able to put one of those on display tonight, it really did have to be restored. And that will be a future project that we hope people will help support, because it's very important. Panels like this tonight that focus on art in the community and that tie art to real people who either produce the art or who are commemorated through the art, panels like this really excite me, because I think they really are a reflection of one of the directions that the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society is moving in. We really seek to do very many different and varied programs, and this is just one example of them. The Alice Ivory exhibit that Tom spoke about will be another one. But I don't want to take your time tonight to talk a lot more about that. Instead, it is my honor to introduce Virginia Daugherty, who's going to share the panel tonight, and then in turn will introduce the panelists to you. I think most everybody in this room probably knows Virginia Daugherty, so I probably don't need to spend much time on this, but Virginia, just to refresh your memory, Virginia hails from Arkansas, but is a longtime Charlottesville resident. Before coming to Charlottesville, she taught English at Norfolk State University in the 1960s, and together with her late husband, John Conover, she ran Papercroft printing for decades beginning in the 1970s. John was a revered member of the Historical Society and helped get us to this new path that we're on. Virginia has been very active in politics and in women's issues. She ran for city council and was elected twice, first in 1992 and then again in 1996. And from 1998 to 2000, she served as mayor. So another really distinguished career. Together with Nancy O'Brien, Virginia has been fundamental in raising funds that has begun the restoration of the Brand collection. So we're very grateful to her for that. And finally, I'll just say Virginia enjoys her civic work, but she told me when I talked to her the other day that she also loves to play the piano with a jazz band called the Flashbacks. So we'll need to get her to tell us where she'll be performing next and come out and hear her. Virginia.
Hello, and thanks for coming out tonight on this cold, blustery night. You know, Francis Brand painted portraits of the people that broke barriers in a segregated society, a society that segregated by race and somewhat also by sex. You know, Virginia was the state that when the Supreme Court ruled that segregation was unconstitutional, Virginia closed its schools down rather than integrate the schools. The University of Virginia did not admit any undergraduates that were female or black until the 1970s. And that was only after a group of women got together and sued the university to get in. One of those people is portrayed out in a portrait out there, Virginia Scott. You might want to look for that. There were no black people or women on Charlottesville City Council until the 1970s. In 1960, there were exactly 3 women in the General Assembly. Now, all across the country, people were breaking barriers. People were showing leadership and changing things. But fortunately, we have one thing about Charlottesville that the other cities don't have. We have a visual record of some of those path-breaking personalities in the work of Frances Brand. Now, Frances did not just paint one kind of person. She painted people from all walks of life. In fact, the first person she painted as a portrait was a young woman who was the signal person on a highway construction crew. You know, the person who waves the flag and says go or stop? And a beautiful portrait it was, too. I think that might be out here. Anyway, she painted artists, she painted scientists, she painted carpenters, musicians, educators, people of all walks of life. Now, I'd like for you to think 1 minute about the enormity of this feat of painting 157 portraits. In the first place, you'd have to be the kind of person that has your finger on the pulse of the community because you know who is showing leadership. And Frances was that kind of person because Frances was an activist and she was out in the community. She was probably one of the first white people to join the NAACP. I know that I was invited to her home because she headed up the Chinese American Friendship Association in Charlottesville. I was also invited to her gallery many times to celebrate the day women got the vote. Frances did have her finger on the pulse of the community. Well, second, though, you'd have to talk to all these people, and you'd have to persuade them to come to your studio and sit, which is not a particularly fun activity. And third, you'd have to actually produce a painting, an oil painting, a work of art, a thing of beauty. It's an amazing accomplishment. Each painting has got a symbol in it it could be an object, it could be something about the clothing, it could be a background that shows the field in which this person excelled. Now, when I first came to Charlottesville, people would take me to see iconic Charlottesville spots, like Carter Mountain for the view, or the lawn to see the gardens, or Timberlake to get a chocolate milkshake. Anyway, one good friend told me she was going to take me to a special place, and that was to Ms. Brand's house. And she took me, this was back in the 70s, she took me over to meet Frances Brand, and at that time, Frances had done maybe 30 paintings, 30 portraits. I was flabbergasted. I thought the paintings were absolutely charming. The paintings are sort of almost a folk art. You know, she studied art in Mexico City, and that was where Diego Rivera was painting, and in some ways they resemble his style of painting. But I could also see the importance of the paintings. And over the years, I worried about what would happen to these paintings. Now, Frances kept painting until she died. in 1990. And after that, her granddaughter, Cindy Brand, took over the role of curator of the paintings. And Cindy continued to show the paintings to school classes. She showed them to civic groups. She showed them to individuals. She did it for years. The paintings were exhibited in a gallery behind Francis's home. But, you know, you knew that Cindy couldn't do that forever. So finally, about 10 years ago, a group of us started talking, and we formed an actual action group, about 15 of us. And we've worked to come up with a plan to see that these paintings could be saved for future generations to see. So we worked with Cindy Brand to do that. And eventually, Cindy got her family to generously donate the collection to the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society. And the city got in on it. The city provided a climate-controlled room and helped to build proper shelving for the paintings, and also gave our group a grant to restore quite a number of the paintings which were damaged. Now, we're so lucky today to have two people on the stage that I want to introduce to you. And the first one is to my immediate left is Cornelia Johnson, Sheriff Johnson, as I call her. Ms. Johnson was the first African-American woman on the Charlottesville Police Force. And later on, she ran for office herself and was elected as the first black woman sheriff of Charlottesville. She also served as the interim director of the Joint Security Complex at one point. We're also lucky to have on the stage Mr. Frank Walker. And Frank is an artist as well, and known to many of you in the community. And he knew Frances Brand when he was a child. And then he became a professional artist and painted her portrait. And we're so lucky to have both Cornelia's portrait and the portrait that Frank painted on the stage today for you to enjoy. And Frank, I'd like for you to give Frank a hand. We're sorry we're missing today two of our panelists because of illness. We're missing Nancy O'Brien, who was the first female mayor of the city. She was elected in 1976. And Nancy also was later appointed as the executive director of the Thomas Jefferson Planning District, and she served in that capacity for 17 years. We were also supposed to have Teresa Walker Price here, and she was a remarkable woman who was the first secretary of the Charlottesville Electoral Board. And Teresa also was a teacher and a librarian in the public school system. And she served in the school system after the schools were integrated. So she was there during that difficult transition period. So now I want to introduce you one more person, and that is Frances Brand herself. We're going to see a little video of her speaking to us.
Well, I've lived pretty nearly everywhere, and I chose Charlottesville to be my home because I'd never really had a home. And it was a very good choice. And what I did was I bought a house and I tried to make it a home for people who needed it. And during the year of the bicentennial celebrations, it suddenly occurred to me that one of the reasons I had come back here was because of the people, the ones who are living here, many of whom came through the university. And they were wonderful people. Why didn't we celebrate them instead of only always celebrating the same ones? Not to take anything away from them, but to prove that this climate, these people, are still achieving. So I decided to call them the first. And I had no idea what I was stepping into. I began with people like the first black president of the Board of Education, and it went on and on and on. And now I have about 140, and I'm working at 4 at a time, and they're just doing things that are so important they just have to come in here before I exit for good.
So, I'm just going to throw out a couple of questions. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now? I'm going to throw out some questions and we'll just play with them, okay? So, first question I have is, what do you remember about Miss Brand? Is there anything you could tell us about her personality or any stories you remember about her? Cornelia, could you start for us?
Oh, yes, definitely. I was owned by a young officer, about 32 years old. My beat was over at in the Friar Springs area. I would always see this lady dressed in purple, whom I admire. And so finally, my supervisor... Hold it up a little bit. Yeah. I'm so loud. So finally, my supervisor told me that there were some things over in the Friar Springs area that I need to check on. So I stopped at this house that had their trash cans out for maybe about a week or so longer. Back then, you know, I guess the trash cans were very important to us, and that was the rules of the city. However, I got out of my vehicle. I'd taken my ticket book out and was getting ready to write a ticket. Had no idea that I would see Miss Brand. So as I proceeded to write the ticket, Miss Brand came out, "Oh, officer, please don't give me a ticket. This ticket belonged to another VIP whose name I won't call in here because everybody would know who it is." And I didn't give her the ticket because the person was someone that we all know, and so that's not something that I'm going to say. But anyway, she stopped me from writing the ticket, and with her beautiful personality and how she thought about people in Charlottesville was just phenomenal. She didn't have no qualms about race whatsoever. She carried me out for lunch, dinner sometimes, and she was just a wonderful person. To know Frances Brand was to love her.
Frank, do you have anything you could tell us about Frances?
I remember her walking around town all the time, being known as the Purple Lady. You know, the thing about Frances Brand is she got to know people. She went everywhere. She went into buildings. She met people. Yeah, you know, it was nothing to find her at a black church on Sunday. She may have been the only white person in there, but she went and she met people. She got to know people. That's how people got to know her. She was instrumental in influencing me in my life at an elementary level. She had an art show for myself, Earl Gordon, Jerry Mitchell, and Bo, my brother Bo. Bo went on to become nationally known.
How old were you?
Oh, 8 or 9.
Oh, wow.
And we hung the pictures on a clothesline with clothesline pins. But here's the thing, we made $25 that day. And I think we all got hooked because all 4 of us became artists, all of us.
That's amazing.
And so it was, she just had, she was one of the people in my life that were, instrumental in probably determining what I would do in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Well, I got to paint her portrait. A friend of mine who was a photographer, I got her to go with me and got Frances to sit in all of her purpleness so that I could paint her. And it was incredible, and that was back in 1983. It was actually unveiled at Zion Union Church, I think on Preston Avenue, when they unveiled it. I can't even remember who asked me to do it, but I remember going over to meet her at that point and got the paint. I'm glad I did because,
We're glad you did.
It is, it's just something very special about her being perfect. I don't know of anybody that did not like her. She was just that kind of a person, and she would float on down the street, up Main Street, down the street, in JPA near the hospital. You would see her almost anywhere. She was just a jewel of a person. I'm not so sure she may have been an angel at some point. She could have been.
Yes, she did always wear purple.
She always wore purple.
Yeah, the children called her the Purple Lady.
Yeah, which is a holy color.
Jim Barnes told me a great story about her being. Oh, hello? Can you hear me now? Jim Barnes once told me a great story about Frances. He picked her up, went to her house to pick her up to take her to a party. She came out and she got in the car and she was beautifully dressed. And then all of a sudden she said, "Oh, I forgot something. Have to go back in." So she went back in the house. And when she came out, she had on a pair of purple tennis shoes. Okay, so now I'd like to ask you all some questions more about yourself. I'd like to ask, what helped you to become a leader in your field? Was it a person that you, a teacher, good teacher? Or was it someone in your family? Or was it a book you read? Or was there something that helped you to step out and make change?
Well, I never actually thought of myself as a leader. I had many people in my life that had more confidence in me than I had in myself. And if you all don't mind, I'm going to name a few. One of them was Delegate Mitch Van Yaris, Chief John DeCoven Bowen, and City Manager Cole Hendricks, Eugene Williams, a lot of people, Nancy Caperton. So basically, there are a lot of people who, like I said, could see more in what I could be than I could see in myself, and it gave me confidence. But I've always been a people person. I love to socialize and I love to give parties, and I'm going to tell you a little story about how gutsy I used to be. I invited the president's daughter, Linda Bird Johnson Robb, to the house to fix the entire lunch myself. And then she went to the ladies' room and the door was locked. She couldn't get out. So she told me that she stayed in there for 3 or 4 minutes, and she didn't know what to think, you know. But anyway, I was so embarrassed. I said, well, I'll never be that gutsy again to invite someone of that caliber or anyone. And the door is jammed. She couldn't get out. And so, you know, she must have thought I was trying to kidnap her. I don't know. But anyway, when she came out and told me that story, I was embarrassed, really embarrassed.
Well, Frank, I'd like to know, I mean, most people that do art as a child, do not become professional artists. And I'd like to know what gave you the impetus to do that?
Being influenced by a man by the name of Waldo Johnson. Waldo was the art teacher at Burley. And when we would go over there after school, we got to see all the things that my brother and I would see all the things that the students were doing in his classroom. And so we started emulating things like that, and of course drawing from comic books and things like that. And so it just, all of a sudden, it just took over. And, you know, when I finished college, all I wanted to be was a bum and a vagabond and go and paint across the world. Well, anyway, for some strange reason, I ended up in medical illustration at the University of Virginia.
In medical illustration?
Medical illustration. And art had followed me everywhere. I had, you know, went in the Army and got a job as a graphic designer after I had been in the field for about 2 years. And I drew some pictures, and a general came to me and asked me, did I want a job? I said, heck yeah, and got out of the mud. But just wherever I went, it followed me. Something artistic, you know, followed me. I worked for Northrop Grumman for about 5 years, and I hated the op sheets that they used to give us. So I used to make my own notes and drawings of pictures and parts. And when I left, they confiscated all my drawings because this stuff was for the Defense Department. So I had some nice drawings, and they took my drawings. But they were, I've had a lot of influences. My mother was a great influence by allowing us to do it. And, you know, when she was a secretary of all these different places, she always had this scrap paper. And so she'd bring this scrap paper home. And when she was typing or teaching someone to type on the typewriter, we were the ones that we got to draw and draw and draw and draw. One of the portraits out here is a man named John Merchant. And John Merchant used to come to our house when we were kids because as a black student, he couldn't go anywhere else on campus except to his room and to the cafeteria and class. So he used to come to our house and Dr. Jackson's house and, you know, had a meal or, you know, sit and watch television, as did probably Trice, a gentleman by the name of Trice, Harold Marsh, who became a judge down in Richmond, that we remember. You know, so we got guys with college education to come in and talk to us, and and my mother exposed us to a lot of art.
Is it clear his mother is Teresa Walker Price?
Right. And she's also out here.
Who was supposed to be here.
Right. She's also out on the flower dress, my mother says, was Francis's idea. Mama says she never dressed like that. But she was my brother and I both just had many influences. Francis being one of them at a very early age, you know. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a more cutting question then. Okay, one more question. So I'd like to know if you had to break any walls to do what you did. Was there anyone that stood in your way, or anybody who put up a resistance, for example, to you, Cornelia, for being to be a police officer?
Of course. At that time in 1976. Use the mic, please. Thank you. You didn't see any female police officers, which was very much needed in that type work. And so, of course, when I went to the police department, they didn't think that, that was a place for a female. And so, of course, you had to prove yourself. But the chief could see in me, again, I'm going to go back there, that I could deal with all types of people. That's how I got the position on the mall. And that was and I left out one very important person in my life who helped me with my campaign, and that's Bon Rumor. Bon, stand up for me, please, and let people see you were my campaign manager. Bon.
Stand up.
No, not a question. I want you to stand up so people can see who helped me get to where I need to be. Yeah. And we've remained friends, but again, like I said, yeah, I knew there would be resistance. My cousin was the first black female police officer in Washington, D.C., and her assignment was 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. She said that she was so nervous she blew the pea clean out of the whistle. I never got that nervous, but when I first started, the police officers would get on top of the buildings at night and throw things down and do a lot of things to try to scare me. But little did they know I was a girl from Colesville. I was used to all this. I was used to all the tricks they were going to play. But anyway, I basically enjoyed that job a lot. And that's how I met most of you. I mean, it's not too many people around that I don't know, because I first started out as being school crossing guard. And then I got to thinking about being a police officer much later.
And also, Frank, I'd like to know, I mean, again, most people don't have the courage to be an artist. I want to know if there were people that stood in your way or said, don't do it, you'll never make a penny, or what happened? Did you have resistance?
I don't think I ever had resistance. When I got out of the military, I went and applied for a job, and the guy that gave me the job was a retired colonel, and I had the haircut, and and he never even looked at my portfolio. He just said, come to work Monday morning. He already knew that I had a work ethic from being in the military, and he hired me. But I can say that probably I don't remember resistance, because I never cared about people telling me I couldn't do something, that that I wouldn't find another avenue to it. And so Frances Brand I was working at the university at the time, and painting her portrait was the second white person that I got to paint in oils that was outside of UVA. Everybody else that I painted at UVA was inside UVA, but they never let me paint. They never came and got me to paint a white person that had retired or what have you. So I ended up painting Luther P. Jackson at the Luther P. Jackson House. I painted Mr. Du Bois at the Du Bois Center, and I painted Mr. Carter G. Woodson for Carter G. Woodson Center, all for UVA. And so that never happened. Once, when I was already working in illustration, and I started to illustrate a black person for a textbook, and they said, no, we don't want that. And so I found that very interesting that that happened. But, that was, I have to remember, that was UVA. So.
Yep, that was UVA then. Okay, now this is kind of a silly question, but still I'm going to ask it. What's the best advice you ever got, Cornelia?
Well, during the time that I was walking my beat down the downtown mall, I had a few complaints about the job because of my sexuality. And Eugene Williams told me, he said, well, now if you're going to complain, why don't you run for office? And he put it back in my lap, and I got to thinking about it. And sure enough, I waited quite some time because my family didn't want me to go into police work. They just thought I was too feminine to be a police officer, which most people did, because when I would answer calls, sometimes they would call back to the police station and say to the chief, send us a police officer over here. This little girl don't know what she's doing. So chief would tell them that's what you have, and talk with her for a while. You'll find out that she does know what she's doing. But yeah, a lot of resistance happened to me.
Yeah. So he put the idea in your mind of actually running for office then.
That's right.
That's cool. How about you, Frank? What's the best advice you ever got?
If you're passionate about something, just do it. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. You can do it. All kind of people will dissuade you for all kind of crap, but don't listen to them. I never have. I've just I was in French class, and the French teacher told me to get up, and I wonder why she told me to get up. I was back there in the back in the corner drawing, and she said, "Get out." And she told me to get out, and I was back there drawing, and because that's what I like to do. I was supposed to be writing French, and so it got me in. My earliest recollection was, everybody remembers the Tom and Betty books. Well, we got these books and these workbooks, and we're supposed to be filling in the blank. Well, I was drawing the pictures of Tom and Betty. And, I got my knuckles cracked because I was drawing instead of doing my lessons. But that's always been a force for me to draw, to paint. I've always done it. I don't remember a time when I didn't, and so there may have been some setbacks of what I may have been doing at the time, but it's like God always brought it back to me because that was what I was intended to do.
Yep, a real calling. Okay, finally, I'd like to ask our two panelists, in these very, very troubling times that we live in, what gives you hope for the future?
Well, I'm going to focus directly on the city of Charlottesville. We have a beautiful city. It has done a lot for me. You citizens chose me as the city sheriff, and it kind of gave me a lot of hope and a lot of ideas. I'm hoping that young people who have a lot of issues, that they will understand that you can be anyone you want to be. During the time I was a police officer, I was put in the school system, and I learned a lot then. And I would stress to them that if you have clothes on your back, shoes on your feet, brain in your head, and look like somebody, and act like you know something, you can go anywhere. And so again, like I say, that I had a lot of positions that I know had I not been into Charlottesville, I would never have gotten. And so again, like I say, I really will never forget the fine citizens of Charlottesville as long as I live. And I tell that everywhere I go. And I'm going to say put one sad note in there. Had I been on the force when things went wrong back then with the Unite the Right, I probably would have been one of the people who would have been deceased. You could not have held me back. And the only reason I did not go down to the rally was because my husband became very ill and I didn't go. But again, I guess God, they said, look like for all babies and fools. But anyway, I would have been there. I really would have.
Thank you, Cornelia. And Frank, what, in this troubling time of history, what gives you hope for the future?
To not ban books. I'm a big history buff, extremely big history buff. And, this is 2024. They just passed an anti-lynching law last year. And so I'm skeptical about the future in America. You just passed the Civil Rights Act in 1965. So we just had a major riot in 2017 down here on the mall. If you ever watched the Ken Burns film, The U.S. and the Holocaust, and you realize there's a portion in that film that I didn't know that the Nazi Party had infiltrated southern states, and this is how they learned how to treat Jews when they got back to Germany. So white supremacy has got to go. People need to stand up, and if you know to do the right thing and do it, and vote. We're living in a time where they're trying to take away the vote again. This is ridiculous. Stand up and fight. This is America. I don't think there's a person in here that doesn't come from some sort of, doesn't come from an immigrant. No one. No one. It is a nation of immigrants. My fathers and my uncles all fought in World War II. I was in the Army during the Vietnam War, but they sent me to Germany. I said, that was the wrong fight. That's already over. So, let's do this right from now on. Let's make America what it's supposed to be,
Let's pull together and do that this year, folk. I'd like to say that we are very happy today, in conclusion, to say that we have some of Miss Brand's family here. We have Romney Brand and his wife, who is Miss Brand's grandson, and their son, Dylan. And I don't know where they're seated, but could they stand? Could you all please stand? They're back here, right here on the back. And again, I'd really like to thank both Frank and Cornelia for their work and all they've done for the community. Let's give them a hand. And I guess I'll turn it back over to Tom.
Maybe we have a little time for some questions if you'd like, maybe about 5 minutes. Anyone have a question?
Back here, there's someone who has something to say.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, I got one really quick right now.
It's a real quick and it's a light question. How did you were so inspiring with your fluorescent lipsticks? You always made me smile. You always made me feel happy just being around you. How did you choose those lipstick colors and why did you wear them?
That I do not know. However, people, you're not the only one. A lot of people remember that. But when I went to the police department and sheriff's office, I had to tell the males there, don't be fooled by the 3 lipsticks you see, that I can hold my own. So that was now that I think of it, maybe it was a purpose behind that. Well, yeah, a lot of people couldn't, but I've been this way all
Thank you,
my life.
Diane.
I don't know why I'm so nervous about this, but I have in my hand Mrs. Brand's son unveiling the picture that's on the stage. This is a program that was given Ms. Brand at Mount Zion First African Baptist Church. Of course, then it was up on Main Street. And there's a picture of Ms. Brand, and to the left of Ms. Brand is me. I was singing on the program. And below that this is also one of the same pictures that was noted in the Tribune. The Tribune was a black newspaper, published by Mr. Randolph White, who was in oxygen therapy at the University of Virginia, only black. And there's Mrs. Brandt's son right there, unveiling that portrait up there on stage. And when I heard about this program being put on, I thought, oh my God, here I am pictured with Miss Brand in the paper. And I got so excited about it. I figured there would be some kind of setup in the lobby where portraits and different pictures or whatever of her. I knew all the firsts would be out there, but that's what I just wanted to throw in, that little piece of news. And I'm so glad I met her. She was a doll. I just loved her to pieces. She was a good friend of the French teacher that lived in the area that she lived in. And she had students that come by, and she would tutor them. Yes, of course. And I nursed Miss Foster until she passed, but her daughter and I are still very good friends, Rebecca. She is a DJ on 91.1 FM, WTJU. So there, I got a clue or them for them. Oh, my name is Clarice Harris. I was Clarice Coles at that particular time, and had just graduated from nursing school. And Ms. Brand thought, oh, Clarice, that's a grand thing that you did. She was so proud of me. And I was so happy that I had done that, and met up with her and Mrs. Foster. Of course, Ms. Foster's husband was a doctor, so I knew, the doctor, medical field. And but Ms. Brand was my favorite, and I thank God for her, and she really taught me a lot. Unbeknown to me, I used some of the advice that she gave me at that time. This paper says 1983. So that's all. I didn't mean to take over.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Mr. Rodney Brand, you might want to come over here and take a look at this. It's listens to song in her honor, Mrs. Frances Christian Brand. Oh, they got it spelled wrong. Bland. Whoops. Seated, listens attentively to Mrs. Clarice Coles Harris, local vocalist, sings Salute to Mrs. Brand, composed by Mrs. Imogene Bunn, another another local. Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome.
Any other thoughts, questions? Yes, ma'am.
My recollection was before she came to Charlottesville, she was in the Army in Florida. And she was asked to be the dinner partner of various diplomats. So she took them out to dinner, and apparently she was a spy. Can anyone agree with me, David?
I think I heard a story that, what was it, Al Capone once maybe thought Mrs. Brand was a good looker, but I'm not sure if they dated or not. I just heard that somewhere. Anyone else have a question? Feel free to stay around. Frank and Cornelia will stay with us along with Virginia, and you can talk to them. Please look at the exhibit that we have here. It'll be up for another week or so. And did you have a question? No? Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Diane, for the lipstick question. Well, really appreciate everyone coming out tonight. Thank you very much. And if you haven't visited with us about membership, that would be great, but take a newsletter with you.